everybody, and welcome to Brain Balance Live. This is a show where we get to pick Heather's brain about neurodiversity across the board for adults, for children. Heather is a board-certified cognitive specialist. She is a therapist. She has been the National Autism Summit speaker, and the Brain Balance program has been touted from massive entities for its ability to work. Isn't that right, Heather?
That's right. I mean, it has to go through really stringent third parties trying to poke holes at it before it can get released in peer-reviewed journals. So we're so excited about that.
Yes, and Heather has so much knowledge about these topics, and she just kind of opens herself up to her audience with me once a week and with Dr. Bryant once a week, and she is basically here to answer questions. So while we're doing this, please drop your questions in the comments, and if you're seeing this on the replay, also, same thing. You can also direct message her at The Hidden Churn if you have a question and you've missed us live. Who knows? Maybe it'll turn into a topic that we talk about. But today's topic is actually something that is extremely relatable, I think, honestly, to all people. Heather, tell everybody what we're going to be chatting about today.
We're going to talk about dealing with family dynamics. I thought this was a great topic for heading into the holidays, but really it applies year-round. When you are the parent of individuals with neurodiverse struggles, or you yourself have neurodiverse struggles and people think you're not paying attention to them when they're talking to you around the Thanksgiving table, kind of some ways to handle that and sort of anticipate and head off issues before they happen.
Yes, I can absolutely relate to this. I think this is going to be really helpful to everybody, especially since we haven't really been able to, or a lot of people have been handling things differently or not differently, like as far as how many people that they're allowing into their bubble. So this might be one of the years that you're actually seeing more people than you're used to seeing. So is this even going to be a little more like a little scary for all of us?
It could be. I mean, truly, there was as much of a bummer as it was last year that certain gatherings didn't happen. I have read so much from many different neurodiverse families saying, "Thank you, Debbie. Good to see you." Saying they actually had some relief, less anxiety, less dread of some of these confrontations. And so now it's like kind of gearing up and bracing for what's to come. I mean, most of the time when these things happen, they are well-intentioned. I mean, you know your family, everything we're going to be talking about today will give you ideas that you adjust, for your family situation. Maybe It's a springboard for something else. But
yes, I absolutely love that. All right. So what are we going to be looking at first? You made some slides for today, I think. Yes.
Yeah, just a few. And this may seem obvious, but hang with me for a second, because I've talked on a lot of shows about journaling, what your child's behavior is, what preceded it, what was going on, what did they eat, were they rested, really think about, and if a lot of our students have multiple struggles, there might be some defiant behaviors, hyperactivity, impulsivity, kind of freezing up, social anxiety where they sort of withdraw. Maybe they get absolutely exhausted from things that would not exhaust other people. So I kind of have really think about what are the struggles going to be? What are the dynamics between your child and other kids or adults who are going to be there? And what are the things that bring those on? Yes, you already know the struggles your child has, but really think about it in terms of, the ghost of Christmas past type of thing, and because the holidays put everything into overdrive. If your kids struggle with sensory processing, I mean, we have blinking lights and car rides where you got the motion with equilibrium. You've got people wanting to touch and kiss and hug, and maybe your kids have a tactile aversion. Just be thinking through all those things. And okay, it always hurts cousin Kim's feelings when my daughter kind of pulls back from her. So we can role play. Something like that. What are some sensory needs? What exhausts my child? When do we need to schedule some rest and digest time in? Just remember, it's not just about the overt, like in the bottom left corner where we have a kid kind of throwing a fit, maybe been having to sit still too long, the schedule's not going according to plan, or defiance, but also think about those who sort of want to blend into the woodwork, because that can also lead to misunderstandings in the family about thinking the child is being antisocial or not friendly or rude or stuck up, when really it's that it's overwhelmed or I don't know how to engage. Think about the tired one, the one that withdraws, can so much more easily get overlooked. And you think about the outbursts, that this is just to say, really think about all those things. And what do we need to do to prep our kids? And what do we need to do? What conversations do we need to have before the event happens?
I love that. And you think like talking to family members about these things is something that is usually received well beforehand?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes, yes. There are going to be times where it doesn't go well. This is not a magic bullet that's going to solve all issues. I'll be very transparent here. I was raising two boys that I took in. His mom had done drugs in utero, and so there were a lot of environmental as well as genetic things going on, a lot of neurodevelopmental struggles, and I had some individuals in my family who had some struggles of their own with mental health. And I was constantly being told everything I did wrong, and I was just a horrible mother, and this is what I should be doing. And raising me was very different from raising these boys. Not to mention that we know a lot more from research about the best way to handle things that didn't exist when I was growing up. And I had always been let me keep the peace and just bite the bullet. And there was a holiday when I was being just chastised repeatedly in front of my boys, in front of the entire family. And here I am trying to establish a safe harbor for these boys and know that they do have someone who loves them unconditionally and who is competent. And I asked to take it into the other room, and this person would not do that. And so I said my piece in front of everyone because I couldn't get her to the other room. And what I wish I would have done, and I'm hoping that I'm not proud of how I handled that. I should have just bitten the bullet one more time. It was just so stressful and overwhelming, and the behavior and the emotions were not going well for the kids. And so if I had planned in advance for this, it might have had a better outcome.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we think about, like, my youngest was just diagnosed with celiacs. And so, like, of course, I'm going to call my mother-in-law and say, okay, what can we do to make sure that the things he's going to eat are gluten-free? I'm going to have that conversation. So it's really very similar.
Yes, it is. I have a lot of talking points on the following slides, but yes, that's a good point, because a lot of our kids, 90% of the kids we work with have some sort of food sensitivity, which is different from allergies. But food sensitivities usually mean that certain foods exacerbate the very symptoms that are that of the neurodevelopmental struggle. So in other words, if they might be impulsive or hyperactive or moody, it makes those things more so.
Yeah.
And the holidays are just, there's sensory overload anyway, and eating is one of the most sensory explosive experiences we can have, because you have the smell, the taste, the texture, the touch. It might be something new. You might have kids who struggle if things are not this, they need sameness and routine and predictability. And so there might be well-meaning relatives that, think it's a good rule that you should try some of everything. And then if you don't like it, or clean your plate, like certain just rules that may have been in the family for decades that really may not be appropriate for your child. So really think about everything: sensory, emotions, behaviors, impulsivity, thought patterns, dynamics with other kids, judgment that you feel from other adults, and try to predict and head those off before they happen this year.
I love that.
I think if we move on, we'll get into some specific. So after you've kind of really thought about this very specifically, just like the celiac disease is a perfect example of that, now we need to meet needs. What can we do ahead of time to meet the needs? And one of the things, it's very important to, as much as possible, keep on your schedule and routine. Structure, predictability, consistency are very valuable for the vast majority of individuals, especially kids and teens who have neurodevelopmental struggles, ADHD, sensory processing, autism, etc. Some days are going to look differently, of course. So what you can do is really put those things on the calendar. And I chose this particular calendar because there's one day blocked off as being different in orange. The other days during the holidays, try not to just completely get off of the way you normally eat and bedtimes and whatever your routines are. Review house rules. If there are any specific rules that pertain when you go to a certain person's house, kind of talk about those. Prioritize values. One of the biggest things that we sometimes do during the holidays is that we overschedule, because that party sounds fun and that event and look at the lights. And yeah, I mean, all of these things sound fantastic when you're thinking about them in advance. What is too much? Have a family meeting and have all the family members contribute to the things that mean the most to them. Having family rituals like that, having traditions, actually really does increase a child's sense of connectedness and belonging, their sense of self, their personal narrative, things that we've talked about on Self-Esteem Show and so forth. But are there any that you're doing just because? Are there any new ones because you've lost family members, something new you want to do to honor someone you've lost in your family? That have a family meeting, and then what can you say no to? If you're doing it just because, that can be a no. It is so important to also have settling time. If you have a trip coming up, or you're going to have a bunch of visitors over to your house, you need to really think about scheduling in quiet time, settling time, decompression time. What is going to be a quiet place in the house where they can escape from holiday music and all the laughter and the conversation and just get back to even keel. All of these types of things are cumulative. So as your kids are getting closer to the threshold, read those signals. If they're old enough and it's developmentally appropriate, talk to them about, body mapping. How do you feel in your stomach when you're about to escalate? Some kids aren't there yet, so you may need to be their body map for them, pick up on the cues. And then already prearrange when you start. Social stories are a great way to do this. You can even write a story with them about Aunt Susie and Uncle Bill are coming over with Jason, Tiffany, and Leanne. And sometimes this might happen. And when it does, I might feel frustrated. Here are some strategies I can use so that I feel better. I can go out into the backyard and take a walk. I can go out to the swing set. I can go into my tent and read a book. Whatever the things are, have those pre-planned and review them multiple times beforehand. You're given predictability, talking about what days are going to look different, have it written out, just sort of like you do a daily schedule during school. And you're already talking about those strategies. But yeah, you need settling time before, day of, days of, and after, to try to get the barometer back to where it belongs before they head back to school, or before there are just big meltdowns that make the holidays not fun for anyone.
Yeah. I feel like I need more settling time in general.
Oh, I think most of us feel that way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we live in such a busy society.
Yeah.
Schedule values. And also, if there are going to be changes, kids deserve to know why they're going to be different. That gives them context. It helps them understand the world, not just this is how it's going to be. Get their input as well. Kids need a voice and choice, and the more they feel some sense of say, some sense of control, the less they're going to seek it in inappropriate ways. It doesn't mean it alleviates it entirely. I'm a realist.
Yeah.
But do look for those opportunities. And also, if you're traveling, having some familiar items, a favorite toy, teddy bear, even a pillowcase. Think about the texture of a pillowcase. Just bring in, or it may be the whole pillow. What are sensory needs? Have healthy snacks available. This is good not only for travel, but if you're going shopping, make sure kids are well rested and fed. Can you go when it's a non-peak time? What can you do to be managing these things? Do your kids have to go at all? How can they be involved in a way that they really feel purposeful in it? Yeah. Can they be your gift consultant, and where they go around and interview people in the family and find out what they want? And you're also teaching them empathy. And doing so, they're stepping outside of themselves and thinking about the wants and needs of someone else. Can they help plan the party? That's not really a yes or no. What parts can they help with? You're working on executive functions and regulation and self-worth, and helping them understand and predict what's going to happen.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
So, all right, let's move on. All right. So here are some specific things to think about. And so with the family dynamics here, before we were talking about sort of prepping your kids and your family, and do try to do things in advance. This is such a hard time of year. It's exciting, and especially keep the eye on the ball. What are the holidays supposed to represent? Connectedness and peace and joy, relationships. It's not about winning an award for how many things you do. And also procrastination increases stress. So try to plan in advance when possible. I know all of this is it's easier said than done. But back to what we were sort of addressed a little bit earlier, educate relatives about the struggles ahead of time. So if you have relatives who meet them where they are, do they know anything about ADHD sensory processing? They know some, but they don't understand this part of it. Give them concrete information. For example, you can say, the brains in individuals with ADHD is different. It means there are issues with impulse control, emotional regulation. And most ADHDers, as a lot of them are preferring to be called nowadays, just they have big emotions, or they get overwhelmed with completing daily activities, and it kind of fills up their mental space, and they don't have room to handle that other emotion. If it's a gift giving holiday, it might be important to talk about how the ADHD brain is an interest-based brain. It's a novelty-based brain. So if they only attend to the gift you gave them for a short time and then they seem bored with it, that does not indicate a lack of gratitude. That is their brain needing something new and novel. Doesn't mean they don't appreciate it. You also want to talk to your kids ahead of time about ways to express what gratitude feels like. And does the person know that that's how you feel? When, you appreciate their thoughtfulness, and you can tell they really considered you when they chose that gift, that kind of thing.
Right.
But you want it to be productive, not a lecture, of course, and talk about how much support helps and what types of support both for you and the child. So be concrete, but do educate them on the level appropriate, on the level that's relevant to whatever activity you're doing together.
Yeah.
If it's sensory processing, talking about how there's a threshold, and these are things that overwhelm my child. So at the table, if it gets noisy, I have given him permission to ask to be excused, and he's going to go put on some headphones and have some quiet time and then rejoin us.
Yeah.
Or, that kind of thing. Or we have found that if someone will give Tim undivided attention for 10 minutes when we first get there, it really calms him, and he feels his place in the family, and arrange he's going to do that ahead of time.
Yeah.
But that's part of communicating the plan. What strategies are in place? They're going to need to eat gluten-free food because they have celiac disease. They are going to be allowed to be excused from the table. They, if they feel themselves escalating, you're not allowed to go out in the street, but you can go in the backyard. But talk in advance, so nobody scolds the child or you for not controlling your child.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Diffuse conflicts and disruptions, but keep your eye on the goal. What is your goal here? Is it to enjoy a peaceful family holiday? Is it really to take your stand because you haven't in the past? And how can you do that in a way that's still respectful, but also full of self-advocacy, where you're showing respect for yourself? Have you taught your kids to self-advocate? But the more you can plan these things in advance, just like we prep our kids in advance, the more you have these conversations before the holidays happen, it gives them time to process. I think a lot of parents, even as well as we know our kids, there are moments when they have these issues that it's hard for us to understand them, and you really have to take a step back. So imagine grandparents or aunts, uncles, cousins who are not around them regularly and don't know what it's like to be in the trenches day to day, and use your theory of mind. Put yourself into their shoes from their vantage point. What are the gaps that need to be filled in for them? Not gaps that but the gaps that they don't know. More about your child than they do.
Yeah.
And who are your allies? And you can talk in advance. Maybe your sister is a good ally, and you say, a lot of times Aunt Becky gets frustrated, and she likes a great deal of order, blah, blah, blah. And you know how hard that is on Janie. So when that happens, can you please take care of him while I talk to Aunt Becky? Or can you kind of step up and lend a voice to what we're talking about. It's very doubtful in most cases that no one in the family has any level of understanding or empathy, right?
Right.
Or at least sympathy.
Yeah.
Use gentle, collaborative, timely self-advocacy. What we say when we say things is sometimes just as important, and where we say them is often just as important as what we say and the way we say them. We talk about being the safe harbor for our kids. You can say so much more probably with words of what you're wanting to say if your delivery is there, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, you can say stuff like, you know, I really appreciate you caring so much and giving your input. I want to run something by you. What would you think about us talking about this in private in the other room?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and just adjust this because you know your family.
Yeah.
but try to have a spirit of collaboration, and you're trying to problem solve together. I know you work so hard on this recipe, and you pride yourself in your cooking, and rightfully so. You are an awesome chef. How do you think what can we do to make you feel good about the fact that John's not going to try that? You know, that kind of thing. Practice mindfulness and self-care. Catch yourself if you are escalating. We teach our kids the signals that they're escalating, but it is so, I don't know if there's much that's harder, at least in my experience as a parent. Parenting kids with these neurodiverse struggles is hard enough as much as we love them. And so when you feel judged, when you get blamed, when people think you're a bad parent, when they seem to have all the answers and very little of the information, it is difficult, no matter how chill and even. I'm a really even keel person.
Yeah.
There was a moment in time when I had enough, and I wish I'd handled it differently. Just really what I said was fine, but it was just the place. It was not, anyway.
Yeah.
But catch yourself. Do you have a weird feeling in your stomach? Do you have tension in your shoulders? Is your head throbbing? Is your heart rate escalating? Are your palms sweating? You might be going into sort of a fight or flight response and going into this self-preservation mode. So you are allowed a timeout also. Have settling time, step away. You do not have to engage at all, much less in that moment.
Yeah.
And be sure before, during, and after. Yes. Oh, thank you for the comment. I thank you so much also for bringing up social media. Jen and I have talked before about the age of social media has, I think, escalated the keeping up with the Joneses. We have this maybe idealistic, or even, it goes back to Norman Rockwell paintings, Yeah. Peace, joy, love, kumbaya, harmony at these family events. Yes, they're supposed to be fun. Yes, there's love and joy and peace and so much good in them. It is not necessarily that way when you're struggling with family dynamics. If you have stuff from the past, even from an unhealthy upbringing, that then translates into now you're the parent, and now some of that same treatment can happen toward the parent of neurodiverse kids. It is so hard. And then we see a lot of people on social media. We can all pick and choose what we post. Jen, I think your family is just a perfect example of this, because y'all do these hilarious TikTok videos that you also, put on Instagram, Facebook. You and Izzy, like, y'all are singing and dancing, and it's hilarious. If somebody, and you're Miss Disney Princess with your acting and singing, you've got all these beautiful, exciting things that happen. Corey's written a cookbook, Plain Green Dad. Y'all do all of these incredibly amazing things. You have this beautiful, fun, loving family. You are also very open about the struggles of raising kids with neurodiverse challenges, but anybody could catch just snippets of your life and think all of it is sunshine and butterflies. You do what's right for your family. You don't have anything to prove to anybody, and nobody's life is perfect. And I so appreciate that comment, because that really often gives pressure. We live in this hugely accomplishment society and all the shiny things and more. And you know what's best for your family. So that it's all about values. What matters the most? And that answer will differ. I can't talk today. From family to family. But self-care before, during, after, just like for kids, make sure you have downtime. You are buying presents, wrapping presents. You are the CEO of the family calendar, whatever the things are. What stirs your soul aside from making sure everyone else has a good holiday? Things that stir your soul. It's not just about sleep and eating right and exercise. Yes, those things are important. But if you don't love exercise, like that exercise class is not super fun to you, you do it to be healthy. That is self-maintenance, not self-care. Do things that stir your soul. Do things that feed you apart from the roles you fill. And this, I mean, I almost didn't write this one because, right. Try not to take comments personally, but I had to. I put try. I didn't put do not take comments personally.
Yeah.
This is hard. This is hard. It's actually gotten a lot easier for me as I've gotten really old,
Yeah.
That we do the best we can.
Yeah. We're so old now. We know all these things.
I mean, this is one that has gotten way easier for me than it was in my 20s,
Yeah.
Are you doing the best you can? Hindsight and all that. We all do the best. Maya Angelou's saying about we do the best we can. And when we know more, we do better.
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up, past mistakes. Learn from them, grow, do differently next time. Your kids will relate better to you knowing that you're imperfect.
Yeah.
And think about the vantage point from which somebody's coming. And most of the time when somebody is beating you up for something, it says more about them than it does about you. Doesn't mean it's easy.
Yeah.
You're doing the best you can. Find your people, find your support system, and stand in your truth.
Yeah. 100%. And sometimes you don't have, like, I sometimes even take the burden off myself to educate anybody about anything. If somebody says something that's like, oh, well, we never had that problem when I was growing up, whatever it is, whether it's about their diet or, neurodiversity or anything. If somebody just says like, oh, well, that didn't exist when I was growing up, I go, oh, cool. And I just move on.
Yes. That is such a good point. There are some battles that aren't going to be won. So why engage? Why expend your energy? But if there is a person who really is seeking understanding or who really has an open heart,
yes,
and you think I really may have a chance of getting through to them, and when they understand, they're going to have my back.
Yeah,
pick and choose. All of this is going to be adjusted. There are some people who aren't worth the breath of trying to educate because you've already tried, or you already know they're not going to hear you. They have all the answers.
Yeah.
So yes, excellent point on that. All right, let's move on. What did you say about I had that growing up? Great minds, girl. Look at this.
It's like you read my mind.
So when we've been talking a lot about relatives offering well-intentioned or not at times. I think most of the time it is, but not always.
Most of the time.
Unsolicited advice in front of the kids. Really, it can be hard, period. But in front of the kids is even harder. But know that your kids are watching you and they are learning how to engage. I think we've kind of talked about that one quite a lot. Why won't you just go with the flow? Like, you're the one being difficult. That's a really good moment. If it's somebody who's open, I'm so glad you asked that. That's a really good question. The reason it doesn't work as well in our family to do that is that our kids struggle with anxiety, and having predictability gives them a lot of safety and security. There is so much new and different going on right now. And by keeping certain parts of our routine as intact as possible, it really alleviates their anxiety.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I struggled without help, and look how I turned out. I could go on and on about this one. I actually posted about this on my page recently. This is a biggie because, for example, the term ADHD, it went through different names until it kind of landed on what it is today in 1986. But back then, it wasn't, before that, it wasn't called ADHD. These kids were usually called difficult, lazy, the problem child, task avoidant. We can do better for today's youth. So often what I have said on this one, and I hear this a lot, even meeting with maybe one parent sees these struggles and wants their kids to thrive and help them, just have the best quality of life possible. And the other one is like, I don't believe in this because I had it. Nobody did anything for me and I made it. And really, to talk about, man, so you understand the struggle. I'm so sorry you went through that. What was that like for you? What did people say about you that bothered you? And we know more now, and there's more that we can do to help your nephew, your niece.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that wasn't done for you.
Yeah.
But show it really, like, genuine empathy, like, wow, I didn't even realize that. Or if you did, I know. And I just feel like because of that, you have an empathy that other people might have some sympathy, but you can have empathy.
Yeah.
Because I remember that everyone thought you were being difficult when really it was how your brain worked, that kind of thing.
Yes.
You're using ADHD as an excuse for bad behavior. Okay, this is a big one.
Yeah.
You would just discipline your kid more, that kind of thing.
You're letting them get away with it.
You're pulling the autism card or whatever, the different derivations of this. Absolutely, what research consistently shows is that the way you parent individuals with neurodiverse struggles is different in many ways from the way you can parent individuals who do not have those struggles. And see, sometimes that's a blanket statement. Are there individuals in the world who let their kids get away with everything for no reason except that it's easier? Yes.
100%.
But this is an absolute cognitive bias that gets a blanket statement thrown on you. But it's very important that if it's somebody whose opinion if it's somebody who can be in your corner and who can adjust their point of view. I mean, anybody can, if there's a reasonable chance that they will, and you haven't already beat your head against a brick wall on this. And really talking about that kind of goes back to concrete education about how their brain is different. They are not giving you a hard time. They are having a hard time.
Yeah.
The ability to control impulses is every bit as much a cognitive ability as is the ability to read and write. I mean, really putting it in that perspective, we are working on things that are going to help give them a brake pedal in their brain. We're not there yet, but guess what? Here are some really big leaps I've seen. You celebrate signs of growth. Don't wait until they've arrived. You know what? He was having 8 meltdowns a day. It is down to 3, and they don't last as long. They're about 20 minutes, and they were 45 minutes. Yeah. Talk about progress, but educate them on the big emotions, and emotions precede behavior. And there are so many reasons. If you want specific talking points, I have so many daily posts about things that you can share with family. It's not, I don't put them in the context of family dynamics, but they're information-based things about the ADHD brain, about sensory processing that you can share with families. And your child notices differential treatment. Don't pretend it doesn't exist. If you see it happening too, now sometimes kids have rejection sensitivity. That is also very much part of neurodevelopmental struggles frequently, where they might misperceive disapproval in a communication partner if what that person is conveying is not overt happiness and approval, because of social emotional delays, because of difficulty reading body language accurately, etc., because of low self-esteem for a variety of reasons. So is it that? And if so, talk to them through that. But if you see it too, empathize. And depending on their developmental level, their confidence, etc., you pull that person aside and talk to them about that, or go with your child, allow them to talk if they're comfortable with it, if it's developmentally appropriate, if they are able to do so. All of these need to be individualized. But another thing to keep in mind is by the time kids, and I'm giving examples of ADHD sensory processing. So here's one from ADHD. Experts estimate that by the time an individual with ADHD is 12 years old, they have received 20,000 more negative comments than neurotypical peers. And y'all know I don't love that word because we're all neurodiverse, but I'm talking about absence of overt struggles versus not. That's not fair. And I know fair is a whole thing, and I did a whole show on fairness, but that's not in the best interest of your child. So maybe part of this dress rehearsal before family events is talking to them. Maybe they have an art project they're really proud of, and talk to them about kind of role play, how they can bring up this art project that they're proud of, where it doesn't sound that they're trying to make everything all about them. Some kids have a tendency to do that because they don't know how to present information, but allow them to talk about things they're proud of, talk in front of them, tell good stories about, he was so patient, kind of with his little sister who knocked over his blocks. He spent 15 minutes building this tower, and she came through and knocked it over, and he kept his cool. Man, he had so much patience. Tell good stories like that. Some of that can even head off some of the other things we've been talking about.
Yeah, it's true. When you get on a roll with it, you can do really, really well. We're kind of in a downward spiral right now because things have started to get more negative, and it begets more negativity and it's so hard because you want to correct behavior. You want to teach the child when they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, but when it turns into, I mean, if you even think about in your relationships, how fun is it to hear criticism from your spouse like constantly? It's not fun. You're like, okay, there's no love here. Like, you're just telling me everything I'm doing wrong all the time. And that even happens with adults. So why do we think that these children are going to be like totally fine with all of our negativity, but we're like, but I have to teach you?
Just keep in mind that behavior is communication, and know that have realistic expectations. It may be depending upon the severity, where you are in your journey of helping improve some of these things. It may be that some meltdowns are inevitable on this trip or during this holiday. How can you minimize them? We're not going for perfection. We're going for progress.
Yeah.
Note progress. We know that intuitively.
Note progress. Yes.
But celebrate small victories. Help them see. Sometimes they don't see the progress in themselves. And if you can be very specific about how they were more patient or that kind of thing, it gives them some mojo to keep going. Right?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and pick your battles. We kind of always need to do that. We certainly need to do it when they are in overdrive due to so many circumstances that are largely out of their control during the holidays. If they have sensory processing challenges, that impacts emotions and behaviors, and you can't wave a magic wand and make this go away. It requires a lot of specific, addressing it professionally, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So do have patience, and it may be that they get away with a little bit more. I mean, still structure, still not a free pass, but it might be appropriate for them to have a little more leeway when things are in such overwhelm.
Yeah, I love that. All right, we've got one more slide here. Yep, this has all of the information on how you can connect with Heather and her brain balance centers. They're in Texas, you lucky ducks. I wish she was in town with me. But you please connect with her. She's a wealth of knowledge. Do you want to tell everybody about your live coming up? Do you have one this week?
Yes. Dr. Brian and I will be back Thursday at our new time, 3:15. It's just 20 minutes earlier than it was. And we will have Facebook Live this week. And of course, he and I won't be back on Thanksgiving Day, but we will be back this Thursday. Yes.
Beautiful. All right. We'll catch her then. And as for us, you'll see us next week. Same time, same place.